I'll start off with a question that I was asked, but I might have asked you anyway. It's a pretty simple question. What does cybersecurity mean to you right now?
I think broadly, when you think about cybersecurity, you've got to first put it into context. It can't be cyber for cyber's sake. It's got to be, connected. There's connective tissue to the discussion about transnational threats. So how do you combat transnational threat? Is cyber, one of the variables in the equation when you start talking about transnational threats. So to me, cyber is bigger than just cyber for cyber's sake. Given the fact that in tomorrow's strategic environment, we're going to be more crowded, we're going to be more connected, we're going to be more networked. That's a good news, bad news story. The good news is it's good for the economy, it's good for growth. The bad news is there are people who look to leverage that in the negative sense. And so because we're going to be more connected, to me, to answer your question, where cyber comes into play is it is the key variable in that equation because it is by design intended to defend and protect that network.
Now I imagine you're talking on the DoD side, but I think the one thing that got everybody's attention was this ID theft from Target, 60, 70 million IDs, things like that. So not necessarily using that as an example, but kind of keeping in mind, what does success look like for you near term, long term? I know you mentioned in the command brief this morning, building that capacity up and things like that, but what does success look like for you?
Yeah, it's about improving our collective cybersecurity posture. And there are a couple of pieces to that. One has to be understanding, coming to grips with the fact that unlike nothing else we've ever dealt with, there is no there when it comes to this. Our tendency is we put a mark on the wall, and of course we got to have direction. You have to have direction, and especially in this physically constrained environment. But we've got to remove the mindset that there is a there, that tomorrow when I wake up or next year when I wake up, that we will have overcome this. I think that's step number one. We absolutely need direction, but there really is no there in this because technology continues to turn over. As fast as you can develop solutions, here comes yet another issue. And so, how do we improve awareness in terms of the affected population? That's a campaign in and of itself. And you can't just target those, you talked about DOD. This is more than just DOD. You've got to reach into schools because a lot of the vulnerabilities actually start at home and make their way onto your work network, whether you're one of the dedicated members of our civilian workforce or you wear the uniform or you're within industry. So you've got a very broad spectrum of people that you need to reach out and touch. And so some of the think pieces are how do you do that? You can't ignore the need to educate because the individual user is often the subject of most of your cyber attacks. And so that's where it kind of makes it not personal, but it humanizes the idea and this discussion and ongoing dialogue about cyber.
What about threats? What do you see as kind of the top 2 or 3 threats right now? Are they people? Are they more process? Or what do you kind of see as threats?
I can tell you, and this is a less tangible answer than probably what you're used to hearing, but I think the greatest vulnerability and threat is complacency. We cannot allow ourselves to become complacent. So I'm excited about a lot of the initiatives that are ongoing that are, not targeting but intended to make us, again, more aware, more educated as to what we really mean by cyber. That's what I thought. Your first question was an insightful question because depending on who you talk to, minus the awareness, you'll get different answers. If you lined up 10 people, you might get 10 different answers on what cyber means to them. So it's incumbent upon us who are in this field professionally to continue to educate, to continue to reach out and make, again, that user who we don't want to become complacent and that user who is often the target of cyber attacks, a lot more aware and a lot more educated so that they can defend themselves.
You've done this business for a while. Your backgrounds in comm and some other areas, and maybe more recently more focused on cyber. But for you, is there a tipping point rather, that's made cyber all the more important now than it ever has? Was there a flash drives in computers or a Stuxnet or something that you see as a professional that kind of had DoD more focused on it than ever?
I think the tipping point, it's probably been a series of tipping points, but it's the evolution. It's the boom that has been the technology explosion over the last, I'd say, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I mean, exponential increases in the use of technology. I talk a lot about tomorrow's strategic environment because it's very important. Again, it's not cyber for cyber's sake, but when you start thinking in terms of the need that everybody has to be always on, to always be connected.
Right.
We talked a little bit earlier before the camera started rolling about sound bites. We live in that world. And so the tipping points or series of tipping points has been the technology boom. It affects economies. It affects the job market. It affects people personally because everybody's got smartphones now. And what do they have on them? They have their banking. A lot of times it's not password protected because you want everything right now. Your email addresses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the tipping points have to do with changes in the environment itself, not necessarily changes to the individual or a significant event that has occurred. It's acknowledgement that the environment is changing literally before our eyes. I mean, I've seen studies that say if you're a freshman in a technical field in college, by the time you get to be a junior, most of what you learned as a freshman will be outdated. Right. I mean, think about that. That's, I didn't come up with that. That's just something that I've read that's interesting. And so things are turning over pretty quickly. And again, where is that intellectual reservoir of capacity to help us think about that? That's what we got to continue to build. Industry has done that very well. The Department of Defense is expending a lot of energy. I mean, I'm very proud of our leadership at the most senior levels, both on the military and civilian side, for the amount of attention we're paying to this. But again, there is no there in this particular environment.
One of the things that's interesting about this conversation, I think people would say is, well, it's a cyber problem. Obviously, you just have to throw more technology at it or something like that. So I guess, from your perspective in this position, is this an IT solution? Is it a human solution? How do you see, not necessarily that that there's one solution, but how does this program out to be? How do you solve this problem of cybersecurity, cybercrime?
I believe, and a great question, first of all, I believe we've got to take into account the human dimension. I mean, in the end, it's all about people. It's about how we develop our leaders. A lot of the great work that you all are doing here at the senior levels, but it starts at the lower level. When it's all said and done, technology is not going to solve this problem. It's got to be about developing leaders. It's got to be about developing adaptive leaders who are comfortable operating in what I call gray spaces, those ambiguous situations. When you move the variable, it's kind of like math in theory. When you move the variable from this side of the equation to the other side of the equation, are you developing leaders that understand the theory, second, third order effects to the point to where they'll be able to solve some of those problems? So back to the environmental piece, we've got to invest, and I truly believe this is an investment that we're making in people. We've got to continue to do that. And it's not just the DoD workforce. There's a couple of think pieces out there about the professional workforce. Do we have the capacity, the bandwidth to continue to, keep pace in terms of the workforce? I think the answer to that is yes. And the answer to that is yes is because we're developing people, not things.
Yeah. I guess another question for you specifically would be, how, within U.S. European Command, how do the other countries see this problem? And from your perspective, kind of going around the region, what's been their take on what you've had to say?
I think the vast majority of our partners, and I hesitate to say all because nothing's absolute, but I think the vast majority of our partners see this exactly as we do. It's an evolving transnational threat. It's something that we're going to have to deal with. And it's something that we're going to have to deal with collectively. There is no, this person's right or that person's right in terms of, the solution sets, at least the recommended solutions. The partnering is unprecedented in terms of engagement and dialogue towards solving this problem, or at least moving in the right direction. And so to your question, the partners are engaged. And we are listening. As I've told them all many times, don't assume, we have the right answer. I'm open to good ideas, and the good ideas are flowing. So I think we're in a good place in terms of the level at which we're engaging and the dialogue from all of our partners. Everyone is passionate about advancing the cause and moving in the direction of solving this particular problem.
My final question, you've been with us for about 6 hours. How do you think the Marshall Center can help you solve some of these challenges?
First of all, I'm very impressed with the work, and my hat is off to you. Every person that I met, regardless of the position that they held, was very passionate about the work that you're doing here. I'm optimistic that I believe in the future between my office in UCOM J-6 Cyber, that we're going to be able to identify some areas of mutual interest that'll help advance both the work that you're doing in standing up the cyber initiative and the work that we are already doing in UCOM. In the end, it's about improving our collective cyber security posture. And I believe both the Marshall Center and what I've seen of your initiative that you have here and the work that we're doing is advancing in that direction.
All right. Thank you very much. That's all I have for you.